afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Tea with Dr. B, Breaking the Cycle of Poverty. My name is Jonalyn Gore, and I get to proudly serve as the Virginia Peninsula Community College Assistant Director of Marketing Special Events. As we get started, I will ask for all to silence your phones as we deep dive into great conversation. If you need the facilities, the restrooms are right outside in the lobby next to the elevators in front of the stairs. For those guests who are new to our campus, welcome to Virginia Peninsula Community College. Welcome back to our returning guests, and a special welcome to our Gator family, which are our faculty, staff, students, alumni, and our leadership, our local college board, and our educational foundation board. Welcome and good afternoon. I would like you all to take this time to recognize our sponsor, Riverside Health. Thank you so much for your support. And to our leader of this fine institution, our president, your most for Tea with Dr. B, Dr. Porter Brandon. Y'all can come right down. To kick us off, please give a warm welcome to one of our newest Virginia Peninsula Community College presidential ambassadors to introduce our panelists for today. Welcome, April Langmore.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is April Langhorn, and I serve as one of the college's distinguished presidential ambassadors. It's a pleasure to be here today introducing our panelists. We are privileged to be joined by these exceptional guests, leaders in their field. They bring experience, empathy, and action to their work. Their voices are vital to today's discussion on breaking the cycle of poverty. Please welcome Michelle Brune, a financial advisor with Edward Jones. She brings 15 years of industry experience and currently manages $26 million in client assets. Ms. Brune specializes in retirement planning and budgeting education, especially for newcomers. Her story sets her apart. She's overcome poverty, homelessness, and early adversity. With the support of mentors, she became the first of her family to buy a home and serve in the military. She is committed to helping others secure their financial futures. Next, let's welcome Dr. Keisha M. Samuels. A Hampton native, community leader, and educator, Dr. Samuels holds multiple advanced degrees, including a doctorate in leadership and professional practice. Her background includes foster care, mental health, and more than 15 years in education. We are proud to have her in our VPCC faculty ranks as an associate professor and human services department chair. A sought-after speaker and DEI trainer, Dr. Samuels also dedicates her time to civic leadership and is the proud mother of 2 future leaders. Also joining us is Deanna Valentine, the City of Hampton's first Director of Economic Empowerment and Family Resilience. With nearly 20 years in human services, she's led key initiatives to improve safety net access and economic mobility. She holds 2 master's degrees and is completing a doctorate in strategic leadership. Her work is grounded in systematic change, equity, and empowering communities through innovation, outreach, and mentorship. And finally, please welcome Charvella West, President and CEO of United Way of the Virginia Peninsula. She has more than a decade of leadership experience in nonprofit service, including nearly 10 years with United Way. From eviction prevention to youth advocacy, she's spearheaded initiatives that directly address the causes of poverty. Her collaborative leadership continues uniting partners across sectors to support families and build a stronger and more resilient community. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to this outstanding group as we explore this much needed conversation on breaking the cycle of poverty.
Thank you. Good job. Good job.
Good afternoon, everyone. Who's been to a tea with Dr. B before? All right, so you know that good afternoon was completely unacceptable, right? So we're gonna try again, and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I'm so excited to be here. Or you're just gonna say good afternoon real loud. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Very nice. Well, thank you for joining us for this conversation. I will be very brief and then turn things over to our guests, and we're going to trade microphones. But I wanted to share just a little bit about why this conversation is important, and also the theme of this year's Tea with Dr. B is about breaking cycles. At our college, we have a culture of care that was created by our faculty, staff, and students. Last year, our theme for the year was on wellness, and so we had Tea with Dr. B's that related to mental health and different challenges around mental health and well-being. This year, it's about belonging. And so many of the themes that we're going to talk about this year are related to belonging. And there are so many factors in people's lives that could make them feel like they're an outsider and that they don't belong. And so many of the topics that we're discussing this year is really to have honest conversations about things that people tend to not talk about. And this panel was brought together specifically because we are all at a place, like we're at a chapter, like the chapter of the book that you have found us in is a pretty great chapter in our life. And it did not start out this way. And oftentimes when people see us, right, you know, they say don't judge a book by its cover. I say also don't judge a book by the chapter in its life that you walked in on. Because you never know what somebody went through, which also means you don't know what someone's going through. And most of us have gotten here, we've smiled, we've made it through, right? We didn't complain, we didn't give up. And so people see us, and a lot of times they have admiration for us. And we don't often talk about what it took to get here. And so we want to have these conversations because in order to help more people feel like they belong, if you think that I'm just the right, wonderful doctor and I'm the president, right? I may not make you feel a sense of belonging if you're struggling right now, right? And you don't know where your next plate of food is coming from, and you don't know if you're gonna have to have a house to live in, right? But if you know that other people have gone through similar struggles, you also know that we don't judge you. We've been where you are before, and you could feel more connected to us because of that little thing. And so we want to have honest conversations, and we want to increase the sense of belonging. And so we're starting with breaking the cycles of poverty. We also want to give hope to those who may be struggling, to know that you could be someone who struggled with homelessness or food insecurity, and you could still be anything, right? So your current situation is not a destination. So that's done. I didn't mean to preach, but I wanted to let you know why we're having these conversations. I'm really happy that you are here. Today, you heard some incredible things about our panelists, and so I'm gonna jump right into questions. We would love to take questions from the audience. So I have a list of 5 questions. I hope I never get through them, because I hope the questions that you have to ask, you feel brave enough to ask them. I don't know, did we recognize our community partners today? Thank you for being here. Please stop by and visit them when you get a chance. So I'm gonna jump into it. And I'm gonna start with Charvela. Just cause. We'll go down the line. So ladies, would you take a few minutes to introduce yourself? You heard what was already said about you, but would you take a few minutes to introduce yourself and weave into that conversation how poverty has shaped your life and your perspective?
Thank you, Dr. Brandon. And thank you all for being here, for caring about the people in our community. And I hope, as Dr. Brandon mentioned, that you will be brave enough to raise your hand, ask a question, and maybe even share. So for me, I come from a family of predominantly single women who I am very proud of, who I believe were resilient and powerful and smart, but they didn't always see themselves that way. When you come from a background that is based in maybe a little bit of oppressive religion, right? And based on time, social things happening, there was a lot of shame that my family has lived with for a very long time. And then economically, having one income is very different than having two. And so I was raised in poverty. I was raised with a group of women who overcame so much, even in poverty. And so for me, this idea of being seen beyond what we don't have was really important for me as I became an adult. I was very fortunate to be exposed to something outside of my small community, my family, to see what life was like for people who weren't economically strained, to see what it could look like besides getting a job, like that there are education potentials for people, that you could live differently than what I was seeing. And so even today, I think the work that I do, the person that I am, how I show up in my community is about recognizing difference, and making sure that I see the people in my community. And I tell people all the time, like, I literally was born to work at United Way. Everything about my life, even when I had absolutely nothing but a trash bag full of stuff, every single time there was always somebody that was there to say, I see you and I'm here to help. I might not have everything, but what I have, I can give. And that's what United Way is all about, making sure every person in our community knows that they have something to give that can make our community better. And that's by helping others. And so my whole life, I've been so very fortunate to have those experiences of people stepping up to help me. And that's how I hope to show up every single day.
So, hello everyone. Thank you, Dr. B, for inviting me here today and inviting all of our community partners. I'm truly honored and humbled to be before you in this particular chapter of life. And so I'm just going to share just a little bit. And as we kind of prepped, as I kind of prepped what this was going to look like, I was mindful that the story that I am telling and the story that I am sharing and the pages of my life that I'm going to be sharing with you all, and I think that all of us are sharing, is the story of our families, right? And so I even checked in with my kids because, not everybody wants you to know everything, but I also believe that, with our struggles, with our upbringing, with our challenges come lessons. And so my chapter, living in poverty, wasn't one that I was necessarily born into, but only a half a generation, if you will, removed. I am the daughter of a farmer, tobacco, the daughter of a farmer that grew up driving mules in the dark. I am the granddaughter and great granddaughter of former slaves. And yet, I am also the granddaughter of an African American woman that owned land in Virginia in the 1800s. And I say those things to say that while my life was filled with love, it was also filled with a dynamic of challenge and of change. And that growing up, we had the exposure. I was born in New York. I had the exposure of knowing a life of living in the city and what that sounds like and smells like and tastes like and feels like. And then also living in a small town with red clay dirt. And I don't know if anybody else knows about that red clay dirt, but of growing in a place where the opportunities for advancement simply did not exist. And my pathway into poverty, and we'll talk more later about the exit, but my pathway into poverty started when I had my children. Because, we don't all take a nice direct path with, getting married and then having children. Sometimes we do things out of order. And for me, that out of order was being a college student at Norfolk State University and having the love of my life, which ended up being my baby at that point in time as well, and I still love her very much, but being a freshman and thinking that I have the entire world ahead of me and dropping out of college. And because of the community that I lived in at that point in time, my option was failure. There was not encouragement. There was not the opportunity. There was nothing saying, you know what, you've got a baby, so do a whole lot of other people. You can still be successful. You can continue to keep going. What pushed me forward was the family. It was having that background. It was knowing that, I came from not only a strong line of women that were innovative and transformative and willing to take those risks, but also knowing the power of education and the power and the strength that having something more to look forward to brought into my world and my life. I'm a mother of 5. That wasn't in the introduction, but I'm the mother of 5 children. We live in a blended family, so I'm actually the mom and bonus mom of 10, and 9 that are still living. My son passed away. My oldest son passed away. But there was such a challenge of what poverty looks like when you're working for a system that is designed to be able to help people that are living in poverty, and yet feeling blocked, feeling ashamed, feeling embarrassed by needing those resources or being told that you don't qualify for those resources. I will share that I was also a married single parent. And you might think to yourself, well, what exactly does it, what did she graduate from? Did she get English? What's happening? I was a married single parent during a time when substance use disorder was not treated as a disease as it is now. You were, or that person was seen as all of those terms that were so negative and so hurtful. And so all the systemic things that we have now to be able to assist people out of that, they weren't there. That's why I was a married single parent with 5 children. And so thinking about what does that look like if I'm gonna go home today and if are the lights gonna be off? And thinking about what is in my refrigerator, rice and bologna. And so we can look back now and think about, remember the days when we used to eat rice and bologna? And I can tell you, we will still throw a piece of bologna in the pan, right? And it's a choice now where it wasn't a choice before, it was the only option. And so when Charvela mentioned that she was born for United Way, sometimes I have a son that's a freshman at CNU, and in his presidential leadership program there, they were asking about purpose and talking about purpose. And I was sharing with him that, purpose is something that takes some time to develop. And as a young man, if you know your purpose, then great. But if you don't get lost in that, because it will come to you. And my purpose has always been to help. When we still lived in the city, I didn't realize that the commodities that we were handing out, and I might be dating myself a bit, but the white box with Econ on it of mac and cheese, those things that we were handing out in the neighborhood in which we lived, the Lehman Village of projects in which we lived, that we were living in poverty, but I didn't know that because my family dynamic was rich. The love was there. The exposure to things was there. And as working in social services for 18 years, and now with the City of Hampton and economic empowerment and family resilience, it's that full circle moment, because for all the things that social services does, there's that difficulty in being able to exit poverty. And in this role and in this position and with this department, we're creating those opportunities for people to be able to exit poverty through a holistic, comprehensive approach, one that sees the value of the person, one that sees and plants the seed that, you know what, that key that you're hoping might be to a car might one day be to your house. And that degree that you're hoping to get, and even just the people that will be viewing this and you all here today, don't worry. You can do this. Just being here today, you have a story to tell, the same as all of us do. So our way out of poverty is different, but we did it, and so can you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Michelle. how am I supposed to follow that? No.
Michelle's got a great story.
So mine is a little different in the fact that, yes, like a young person growing up, I didn't know any different because it seemed like you're in a dynamic where that was happening in the community. Where my story breaks a little bit is it was a community of addiction and hate and abuse. So when you think of those types of things, then you're wondering, what is my next step? Like, I'm just destined to stay here in this. So as that cycle developed, I was homeless at 16, as my bio said, living out of a car. Left home at 16 because it was stay in this or find a way to get out. And staying with my uncle, who was a more successful family member, but not seen all the time, didn't live in that same neighborhood. That family took me in, and then you see a different way of living. And then that was the click for me. It was, wait, it's not normal to go to the welfare offices and the social service offices and always getting these different, as a little kid, you know, you're just following the parents along wherever you've got to go, right? But you saw other children, and so you thought, oh, this must be what everybody does. And sitting with my aunt and uncle as a teenager and having them go through, this is what this looks like when you budget and you do financial planning and you do all these savings and things like that. And so then it started, so I can become an air traffic controller in the Navy, which was my dream at 12 years old. I'll be honest, I wanted to fly, but then my dad was like, you're afraid of heights? So I was like, okay, what's the next best thing? And he's like, you could tell them where to go. What's that job? Air traffic controller. So I was an air traffic controller at 19 years old in the United States Navy. Had the best recruiter ever, who was probably like, he's probably a car salesman. He should have been, because he sold me on it like instantly. I was like, I'm going to go to the Air Force because I want to be an air traffic controller. He's like, the Navy has their own Air Force. Like, so then, you know, that, as they say, now that ship has sailed. So, and it was just when you achieve a goal, and then you achieve a goal, and then you achieve a goal, now all of a sudden life doesn't seem so difficult. It's still hard. It's hard work to achieve those things that you want to do in life. It takes discipline, which has to replace the motivation some days when you don't feel like getting out of bed. Everybody has those days. But I like the position where I'm at now, because now I have the opportunity to pay that forward, to come out to the community and speak on things. Because to try to explain somebody the 40, 30, 20 rule with financial planning when you're just still trying to figure out how you're going to keep the lights on is demotivating, to say the least. So I like to be in a place where I can say to someone, create a realistic goal. Maybe it's just, I don't want to be struggling to pay the light bill this month. So let's look at some things you could do to change that dynamic. Maybe you don't necessarily have to have the Kraft macaroni and cheese. Maybe we just get Kroger brand, right? So some sacrifices have to be made to get to that point. None of us sitting up here today got to where we are overnight. Like, we all went through our own struggles on the ladder on the way. And as Dr. B already said, that's what you need. You're looking for those people that, while we look like we're in a great place now, we can empathize with what you have gone through, and or are going through, or maybe will go through in the future, because life throws curveballs all the time, right? And so I like to look back and say, yes, I can have a fried bologna sandwich. I'll still do it too, right? Okay. But it's also nice to be in a place that's not it's a choice. It's not a decision that we have to make, and to be able to bring up our children in a different spot. So that we'll get into, but yeah, it's Yeah, that's all I got. I'm gonna start crying if I don't say it.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Dr. B, for having me be a part of this panel. A little bit about me. Who am I? I am Keisha Samuels. I am the baby of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? And when I think about who I am and what has shaped me in this transition of coming out of poverty, it goes back to many of the things that the panelists have already stated: the support, the love of our family. While my mother was not a high school graduate at all, and when you grow up with as many siblings as I did, there was never a surplus of anything, ever, ever. So you learn how to make good with what you have. And my mother was just an impeccable woman that modeled to us what love was, how to survive. You know, she was the framework, she was the model of how you survive. My mother cleaned for a living. She cleaned at Riverside Hospital for 42 years and did it with a sense of pride and always did it in excellence. But when I think about what has shaped me, my mother said to me one day when I was complaining about something, you know, I clean toilets so you don't have to. That kind of, you know, that landed. It landed. And I have always been one that when I'm told no, that just fuels me. It fuels me. And having a mother that would work hard, would love us unconditionally. And you might say, how are you, baby of 10, for raising a single family? That's another panel, okay? That's another panel. But knowing that each time something happened. I graduated from high school. I graduated from college. I got my master's degree. I got my first job in social work. Those things that I held as my ceiling became my floor. Then I had a new ceiling to try to reach. And so education was the thing that for me, this poor little black girl growing up on Shell Road, it was my thing. It was how I was going to make it out. It was how I was going to change my circumstance. It was how I made that paradigm shift that, you know what, as Deanna said, you can do it. You can do it. Yes, it's hard. It is hard, but you can do it. But having that support, having community, having people that truly believed in me, having people that saw in me what I couldn't even see in myself, helped me to navigate this journey of poverty. And so I say to those who are out here, and I see a few of my students out here, that yes, your circumstance, poverty does not define your potential. For me, it empowered me. It empowered me to do better. So, Dr. B?
Tea with Dr. B is brought to you by Riverside Health.
Cancer doesn't just impact one person, it touches the entire family. At Riverside Cancer Care Network, we're here for every step of your family's journey. Our team of experts work hand in hand, offering supportive care and advanced treatments so your family can face each day with hope. We're in this together, celebrating each step along the way for victories big and small. Together we conquer each day, each milestone, each triumph. Riverside Cancer Care Network, conquering cancer together.
Conversation. I think I told you all this story, but I'll share it with you before we go into the next question, which is about some of the barriers that prevent people from achieving financial stability. And the story I shared was I ended up being an academic advisor at the same college where I earned my bachelor's degree. And this college was not known for its wide swath of poor people. Like, it was very few poor students went to this institution. And so one day as an academic advisor, I get assigned a student who was from the same neighborhood I was from. And so if you're familiar with New York, I'm from Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York. Amazing place, no matter what you've heard. But it was, I mean, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, very poor, lots of drugs, lots of crime, just not a wonderful place to grow up. But I made it out. And so I'm in my academic advising office, and this young man comes in, and I'm looking at his file, and I'm just like, oh my God, he's from where I'm from. And I already know, like you, no one knows about the shootings you've seen. They don't know about the death you've seen. They don't know about that. Like, no one knows that. And when you go to an institution where everyone is living what at least seems to be a financially charmed life, you have to get through a lot, right? Shame, imposter syndrome, like to feel like I belong. And so I saw him, and I'm like, he is my new baby. I'm going to give him everything he needs. I'm going to be here for him because I know he's at a place where we had a food pantry, but it was like, for what, right? It was for the human services majors. So we would get experience at what a food pantry looked like, but nobody needed the food pantry. And so I worked with him his first year. And at the end of his first year, he ended up on academic probation. And I was like so disappointed. Like he was like so close to being dismissed. And I was so disappointed. And I think I was disappointed in him and myself because I felt like more of us have to make it out. Right? And like, what else could I do to help him? And I was really disappointed. And I just said to him, what happened? You know, because of course, all year long, he told me everything was great. And then when I see his grades, they were not so great. And I said, what happened? And his response to me was, what's the big deal? We from Bed-Stuy, we're not supposed to accomplish anything. And it broke my heart to think that that's what he thought about himself. One, that's what he thought about us. You know, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm your example of why that's not true, right? Your zip code does not have to be your final destination, but in his mind, nothing was expected of us. And so all he did was fulfill the stereotype that little poor kids from Bedford-Stuyvesant will not accomplish anything. And it made me think to myself, the system doesn't have to tear him down. No one has to do anything to him. He's already decided that he is set to accomplish nothing in his life. And so when I think about some of the barriers that keep people who are in poverty, generations of poverty, a lot of times it's just your own mindset. Like if you think nothing will become of you and nothing should become of you, right? The world doesn't have to do anything else but let you live out, right, that prophecy. And so it reminded me that there's more to breaking the generations of poverty than food pantries or support services. Like, how do you help people understand not only are you worthy of more, right, but more is possible? And so I was thinking about that when I came up with this question, because a lot of times we know that there's tools. One of the barriers that I believe are one of the most significant barriers to getting through poverty is just what you already think is possible. And so I wanted to ask my fellow panelists, and I'll start with you, Michelle, what do you find is one of the greatest barriers for people breaking the cycles of poverty?
Well, I think it's just that. It's yourself. You know, your worst critic is yourself. When you look at the mirror in the morning, if you're in that down spot, then you have negative things to say about yourself when you look in the mirror. And as I stated before, we all go through our down days, but it's that discipline and motivation that it takes to stay on target and prioritize what's important to you and be willing to make the sacrifices even when you don't want to. It was true for myself, and it's true for the people that I work with, that will sit down and go through all of that planning and check back in a few months later, and I go, how's it going? And I said, well, why not? It's decisions that you made. You have this thought process in your head that says, I'm not worth it, or I have to do this. The world has made you think you have to buy the brand names or do all these things that the imposter syndrome, I think you called it, which is probably very true, of where you don't want people to know that you're in a different place than them. That shame that you feel for yourself is not the shame that other people see. We do it to ourselves. So it's also not like we're our own worst enemy for lack of discipline or motivation. We're our own worst enemy because we think people are thinking things about ourselves that they are not. And then we create our own barrier of, I can't do that because so-and-so will think a certain way of me. So you have to be even more disciplined to put your own thought process to the side and critically think about where you really are in your space. Because it can be really bad. It could be really bad. But you got to be able to see beyond that and set a realistic expectation for yourself. Don't say, oh, I'm going to save $1,000. You know darn well you're not going to be able to save $1,000 based on the budget that you have. Say, I'm just not going to buy Starbucks for the next month. And let that be your goal. Let that be something that moves you to where you can start changing that mindset of, I am a positive person. I can be a positive influence in society. When you have those little wins, those little wins start to add up like a domino effect and change your mindset for the future. To where when the goals become bigger, your mindset is bigger. And you go, I can do that. I did this, why can't I do that? So you take yourself from the negative to the positive.
Anyone else want to add to barriers?
I think I would just say fear, because there's this, so often we find that it's the fear that keeps us from taking that next step. Because if I do get this better job and I'm going to lose my benefits, or my rent's going to go up, or if I do think that maybe I could get that apartment that's not subsidized, well, what happens when I lose my job? Now I'm going to be homeless. Or that fear of failure. Sometimes folks that are living in poverty, and just humans in general, you don't want to fail. You want to succeed, and you certainly don't want someone else to tell you, or someone else to know that you failed at something that you may have put your heart and soul into. And so I think that is one of the biggest challenges, in addition to that negative self-talk. That negative self-talk is really trying to be able to step outside on faith and let your faith be bigger than your fear.
I was so glad you asked this question. I think one of the greatest things that this series allows us to do is to dispel myths, to give a different understanding. And so in the work that we do around poverty, we often talk about root causes and barriers and what keeps people in poverty. And I want you all to think about what it feels like when you try and you try and you try and you give everything you got and it still doesn't go the way you want it to. And just imagine if that was every day. Some of the most hardworking, most generous, community-minded people are living in poverty every single day. And so for anyone who's not had that experience or been in close proximity to that experience, I don't want us to walk away thinking that people are experiencing poverty because they didn't try hard enough, right? There's a lot of try. And I think all of us have seen it in our families, right? And so when we talk about poverty, it's really, can I afford the unfortunate? If I'm given everything I've got and things are going smoothly and something out of my control happens, can I still keep going, right? And so I think some of the things that I've experienced that we've even talked about today and we see is that having the resources, and it's not always about money, right? Poverty is not just about what's in your bank account or what's on your paycheck. Some people don't earn a lot and still can afford to pay all their bills every month, and that's great. But when that unfortunate things happen, can I get extra hours at work, right? So that I can pay for my car repair and still pay my light bill, right? When I need extra, do I have the time to give it? And So when we think about poverty, it's not just about finances, it's about whatever that unfortunate thing is. Do I have community that I can count on? Do I have a place where I can go and belong when I'm feeling a deficit internally, even, when we're talking about that mindset? And I think it's just so important for us to remember that oftentimes the unfortunate happens, and if we don't have somebody or something that can help pull us out of it, that is poverty, right? And so it's up to all of us to help break those barriers. None of us does that alone, right? And so I think one of the barriers that we can address every single day is making sure that we see each other and saying, how can I help you? Whoever that is.
I'll, I'll just add that I also think that exposure and having experiences is critically important. I had never been to Norfolk until I went to Norfolk State. My mother didn't drive. So I hadn't been through the tunnel. I didn't know there was a tunnel, like we going through a tunnel, but not knowing, not having those experiences, if your whole world is your block, you don't know what else is out there. So taking advantage of experiences, exposure, is very important so that you see that there is a different way outside of what you are accustomed to. And just, as Charvella was saying, the resources there's a resource for everything. But many times, those of us who have lived in poverty, you don't have the access to get to the resource. And so then you have to then figure out, okay, there's a resource, but I don't have transportation to get there. I don't have any minutes on my phone to call. I don't know what to ask. I don't know what I don't know. And so when you think about, those things that are the things that keep people in poverty, as many of our panelists have said, many times these are great people. We're great people. We want the same things that other people want in life. It's just the circumstances sometimes that prevent us from being able to do that.
Imagine your world without limitations. Pain-free, comfortable. At Riverside Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Specialists, our priority is to help you get back to what you love to do and feel like you again. We give you options from diagnosis to recovery, both surgical and non-surgical solutions, so nothing slows you down. Riverside Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Specialists, ensuring you're always in motion.
I was sharing with our panelists, my own child is lovely. I'll have to preface this. She's a lovely, 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 lovely human being. And she's spoiled so rotten. And she doesn't know it, right? She's never had a single struggle in her life. And I was picking her up from middle school one day, and I was driving her home, and she always has these deep, thoughtful questions about the world. And she doesn't know the life that I came from. She's never worried about a thing in her life except for how am I gonna get to here or there? Like things like that. And she asked me one day on the way home, she said, "Mommy, are people poor just because they're lazy?" And I remember I'm driving home, and you ever have one of those moments where you know you might do something bad, right? And I thought, she's talking about me, right? Are people poor because they're just lazy, right? And I'm also thinking, how did I raise someone who thinks that, right? Who thinks that somehow poverty is connected to your own ethic. And so I had to keep driving, but then we had I had to have a long conversation with her about two incomes, right? Coming home, knowing there's a home to come home to, not having violence in your house, not having drugs in your house, not having to worry about when the lights or the heat will be off, having parents that are educated, what she was able to be exposed to compared to others. And I had to talk to her about the catching up you have to do by the time you even realize you're behind to begin with, and how hard that is, right? And so, and that started me down the journey of taking her everywhere to do volunteer work. But I thought to myself, my husband and I failed, right? Because he and I grew up with nothing. And here's my sweet little angel asking me if poor people are just lazy. Right? And so I asked the panelists, now that we are in this place where we are, where we don't have to worry about the lights being turned off, and we have cars, and our bills are paid, and our children don't know anything about the hard times and the bologna sandwiches. Anybody ever get the free cheese, the 5-pound block of free cheese? Oh, delicious, right? Delicious cheese, right? My daughter knows nothing about the 5-pound block of free cheese, right? Best cheese on the planet. The government surplus cheese, for those of you who don't know, right? She knows nothing about that, right? So now that we're all parents and we want to raise children who are empathetic, right? Who are sympathetic, who want to create welcoming spaces for others, what are some of the advice that you give to folks who are either college students or those of us who have the pleasure of working with others who may have not come from a place of privilege? What are some of the things that we can do to help our children understand that poverty shouldn't be a judgment, right? That poverty may be a condition, but it's not necessarily a circumstance of one's own ethic. Keisha, I'll start with you.
I think it goes back to exposure again. Exposure. For me, for my 2 children, my husband and I, you have to have some skin in the game. You have to understand that nothing in this world is going to be given to you. There is nothing that is free. You have to work for everything. I think that in doing so, making sure that they have those experiences. My daughter, went private Christian school, classically trained ballerina. My son travels soccer, all of the things. But understanding that there's somebody on your team or that you're dancing with who does not have the same as you. So creating those opportunities for them to see. My husband was not born in this country. Making sure that she can see on the other side of the world how children are living, how families are thriving with what they have. That is so important, to make sure that you understand those experiences and explain it. When the hard questions come, explain it. I'll share one experience. My daughter, I used to drive her to Jones Middle School. And there was a lady who would always be right downtown Hampton, and you could tell she had slept outside. And my daughter said, I want to use my allowance next week, and I want to make her a basket. I said, oh my God, that is so amazing. That's wonderful. She got her little money together. She went to the Dollar Tree. She got this lady a whole basket of things, about $20 worth of things from the Dollar Tree. She took it up to the lady, and the lady said, I don't want that. I don't want that. Give me some money. If you ain't got no money, get that out of my face. My daughter was crushed. But in that moment, it was a teachable moment for me, that you did what you felt was right. Whatever is going on with her, she can't receive it. But do not let that hinder your heart for giving, for seeing a need and addressing it. But she was crushed. And to see my child crushed, it was one of those mama's moments, like, she did what? But it's a teachable moment, because that could have easily crushed her, to say, you know what, when you see people out in the street, don't do nothing for them, because they don't want nothing but money, or they don't want nothing but whatever. But having those experiences and using moments like that to lay a foundation for what service really looks like, and breaking that cycle, I think that's critical.
Yeah, we were big on volunteerism. Habitat for Humanity, the churches, me and Deanna found out, we were both up in Winchester about the same time, and there were churches up there that would get together and kind of do the same thing as Habitat, helping people rebuild their homes or fix up, do paint, things like that. And it gave the children an opportunity at a young age that even though they weren't experiencing it themselves the way I did growing up, they were seeing it happen somewhere else, and they could learn that not everybody was living the way that we were living. And I think it's important because the second fold of that is we broke the cycle, but we don't want the cycle to happen again. And so I didn't want my kids not knowing what laid for them on the other side, thinking they were always going to have this safety net, and then them find themselves in poverty and right back in that cycle again that I had worked so hard to get us out of. So, or me and my husband, I should say my husband, but it was really me. Anyway, I'm just kidding. Anyway, it's a team effort. That's what we say. And so having them see that, and then also talking about it. I mean, that's the one thing, right? We're talking about people belonging. Talk about those experiences. And you know when the teachable moments happen, when they're like, just use your card. When you say no, oh, we can't afford it. Everyone in here has got kids that's had that, just write the check. Like, that's not how that works. Okay, teachable moment approaching. So talk about, but don't just say we know we can't afford it. Tell them why. Give them the why. And then that starts to open. And yes, 4 years old is different than 14 years old. But if you start that way, then they always have the understanding of what the family unit is facing, right? Having the skin in the game, so that they know why it's important to do certain things the way mom and dad want us to do certain things, rather than just, I can't have those Nikes because mom said no, right? Mean mom. So that's the biggest. Talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Let them in on the conversations that are happening in the household so that they know how the finances are working. And then that also opens up their eyes a little bit to start looking outward, right? Well, I don't want to, I want to do better than that, right? So you're encouraging them to get out in the world, and it doesn't stick after one time. So it's up to us as parents, right? They go to Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and go all these different programs where they do little patches and badges for finance and stuff. But that's one time and done. And we all know they're really just there for the cookies. So they forgot as soon as they walk out the door. So it's up to us to keep really reinstilling those values into them so that they know what's really waiting for them outside the safety net of our front door. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to add anything?
Well, just kind of real quick. So, like I told you guys, I shared that I'm a mom of 5 biological kids, and so they're interesting because they're in different spaces in that continuum. So the OG, my oldest daughter, right? She was the struggle. She was the practice child. She was the one that grew up with mom. She's the one that has all the stories to tell, and she probably shouldn't tell some of those stories to people, right? And she's happy to tell you that she's 30 years old while I'm telling her to stop telling your age, right? But then I have the middle child, right? That's the one that's like, okay, well, I was kind of born into, we're kind of maybe getting ready to step out. And then I've got my babies, right? My 18-year-old and my 16-year-old babies. And they're like, I don't even know what y'all are talking about right now. What do you mean that y'all did this? Or what do you mean? My daughter and I, we laugh sometimes that, we ran away. We ran away, and it was the exposure, right, that we were talking about. And we ran away to the beach, to Virginia Beach, 3.5-hour drive. And me and my daughter stayed at La Quinta Inn over there. I think it's Military Highway. And we survived the weekend on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and fruit cocktail. And it is a fond memory because of all of the things that we did that were free while we were there. And so there's that piece of, they're very happy to share the things that we went through. But it's also us being able to show, hey, this is why we're saving so that we bought a house. And that what that looks like, that the no for the Nikes isn't just no because you don't need them and I just bought some, but it's the, hey, well, if you want them, and this is what my kiddos do now, if there's something that you want, then what's your proposal, right? What's your plan? So if you really need these shoes, then what are you going to do to get these shoes? And I don't mean what are you going to do around the house, because that still means that I'm paying for them. So when they got to the point that they were old enough to work, and even before they were old enough to legally work, right, they're doing all of the odd jobs. And my son wanted to have a lemonade stand. And so we're doing all of these things to show that there has to be some skin in the game. There has to be some effort towards it, because nothing that I've worked for has been just given to them. You know, that they see me up late at night. They've seen me at football games and travel softball games and, you know, coming in from work and still continuing to work. And so it's that dedication, it's that modeling, it's that living by example. But then I say that to say, and just kind of to wrap it all up, is that it's hard. And those teachable moments when your kid doesn't have what somebody else has and you really wish that you could provide it to them, or really wish that there was some better option, but then you take them to go ring the bell for Salvation Army, and you take them to do the food bank when we're packing food up, and when they get a chance to actually truly see what living in abject poverty, pervasive poverty looks like, when you take them and they see the tent cities in Baltimore, and you know that's not a choice, and that might be the only choice, and it's still not the best choice. So being able to, you know, reiterate to our kids, to being able to show them that there are two sides, there are three sides, there's multiple, that poverty is dynamic, and it's not just something that impacts people that make bad decisions. It's not that it was something that somebody's lazy has done. And that realistically, you know, sometimes we use the term that, you know, the ALICE population Charvela, very much the United Way works with, you know, they're one paycheck away. But realistically, there are a lot of us that even where we are now, anything could happen, especially in our current times, where all of us could be on the other side. And so how do we make sure that we are instilling those additional resources? What does it look like? How can you rob Peter to pay Paul? What are those, the lesson that I was just teaching my son right before I came over here, because he's got car insurance that's due, right? And so he's a teen boy with car insurance. And so if any of us have teenagers in the house, we know how very expensive that is. And so he wanted me to leave enough money in his account just in case he wanted to go, you know, hang out with friends. And I said, well, that's actually not how bills work, right? And so there's that teachable moment. Now, of course, the mom and me is going to leave him a little bit of money in the account, but there's that teachable moment of that's not how bills work, so that when he does finally, eventually, maybe leave my house into his own home, he won't then have to call mom to say, Mom, I decided to go to Cancun and didn't pay the electric bill, or my car has been repossessed, because he understands that dynamic.
Well, would you please help me give my panelists a round of applause? Thank you, ladies, so very much. I hope there was something here that made you feel inspired. We're going to hang around for a little bit. You can feel free to come ask us questions, and we look forward to having you at the next Tea with Dr. B, which is on November 6th. We're going to be talking about body images and like breaking the cycles of negative mindset and thought about like the way we look and feel about the way we look. And so I hope you join me then. Thank you again, ladies. It's been a pleasure. Everyone grab some food if you haven't had some already. Thank you. Yay! You all did wonderful.